Hi everyone, my name is Lucian. Most of you know me from Twitter as Triangle Investor, and today I have a new guest in my show, Mr. Keith Bodnarchuk. He's the CEO of Cosa Resources, Uranium exploration company. Keith, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Keith, give us please one minute overview of who are you, what's your background, and how did you become Cosa Resources CEO?
Sure. So I actually started as a geologist in the Athabasca Basin. My first job in the basin was in 2007, working on the Millennium Project with Cameco. I then finished my degree, got on with Denison Mines, where I spent the next 10 years working on Phoenix, Griffin, J Zone, Husky Zone, their African assets, which were eventually sold to GoviEx in Zambia.
Yeah.
And then after that 10 years, I decided to go back and take my MBA. I was going to pivot maybe into the banking world, looking along those lines, and I reconnected with Steve Blower, who is our chairman of Cosa Resources, and he's with a company called ISO Energy at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that you got to meet this guy named Craig Perry. And so I met Craig Perry. They hired me that next day to become the corporate development manager of ISO Energy. Joined at a great time. It was just at the initial discovery of the hurricane zone. We built that company from about a 30-cent stock to as high as $6. Then ultimately I moved on in early 2021, spent the next year just kind of cutting my teeth on different deals, working in nickel and copper space. In nickel, I helped with Archer Exploration acquiring the nickel assets from Walbridge. Then in copper, I helped Visa Copper acquire Consolidated Wood Jam, BC Porphyry District here in British Columbia. And then in the background, I kept building Cosa, knowing that that was the project where I want to become CEO and be market facing. And Cosa, we listed in, I guess it'd be March of last year. And then we spent really the next 14, 15 months just acquiring uranium exploration ground and assets to where now I'm kind of ready to come out and just tell the story and start telling people that, we're going to be exploring and this is the assets we have. And this is, a new story, but backed by a team with a tremendous track record in the uranium space and really the track record of creating shareholder value.
What was the price when Cosa IPO?
So we IPO'd at 15 cents. At the time, we only had a copper exploration project in Saskatchewan. And then, like I said, over the next 15 months, we ended up building out our projects to what we currently have, which is 6 projects, totaling over 140,000 hectares, all 100% owned.
Okay. Before we start to talk about your company, can you share your thoughts about the uranium market? What do you think? Where are we at the moment when in the terms of sentiment? And how do you see uranium spot market and uranium stocks performing in the next 6 or 12 months?
So I honestly think we're at the start of a boom. We're right there, and we're starting to be in it. And so you've seen the spot price react, especially to when uranium funds started to come into the market. Especially Sprott and things like that the price started to go a bit bonkers. And you've seen it kind of hover around $53 now for the past few months. And what you're seeing now is a lot of new funds start to be developed here, where they're also going to be coming to buy in the spot market. And as we've seen in the past, it's actually very tightly held. And when these new funds come in, you can actually see the price move accordingly. And so what happened, obviously, when Sprott came in, the uranium equities responded, and you saw that spike. But there was overall market pressures. And I think what people saw, market sentiment, was that, okay, we actually have a win in an overall suppressed market. So they started to sell a bit of their uranium equities, which caused them kind of to come back down. What that has created now is an opportunity, right? Yeah. You have very undervalued uranium equities, but you have a uranium price that's been not only stable, it's actually been going up relative to, copper and gold and stuff that's fallen back off. Uranium has stayed steady, which is a huge win, just showing that the strength of the price of it right now. And so, over the next 6 to 12 months, there's going to be a massive opportunity here, especially with uranium equities, right? Because they are undervalued relative to the price of uranium. And you could see the price of uranium really start to move up, just even with these funds and entering the market. Yeah. And then kind of going one step further too is what you've seen, obviously, with the war in Russia, Ukraine, which has really caused a lot of energy security issues. Obviously, what's happening in Europe, a bit of an energy crisis. And what you might see here is that U.S. utilities, for the past, 7, 8 years, there's always been drawdowns of stockpiles. Everybody said that, okay, there's a large supply and demand gap, but it doesn't matter because the stockpiles are so large. Well, if this energy security issue is not enough to get the U.S. Utilities to start re-adding to those stockpiles, and I don't know what will. And so if those guys enter the market, in a meaningful way to start adding to the stockpiles, and then the price will go bonkers.
Yeah, I agree. But most of the uranium investors, especially the new ones, are wondering why the stocks are not going higher, despite the everyday flow of very good news and for uranium and the fundamentals, which are never better. Can you explain that phenomenon to an average investor?
Yeah, I do. Like I said, I think it is the overall market. I think it's been a bit skittish, and there's also been people sitting on the sidelines with a lot of cash that have really kind of exited, the market overall in the past 12 months. But yeah, I think you'll see in any boom too. It won't just be a straight line like that. You'll see some ebbs and flows, obviously, of the stocks themselves, and that just creates opportunity to me. So, like, I'm obviously a big investor in the space, and I've been buying because I just see this as an opportunity where the equities don't match the price of uranium.
Good point. Okay, let's talk about your company. I want to go through details of all your projects. So you have 6 uranium projects
Yes.
in the Athabasca, and you have 1 copper project in Saskatchewan, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So let's start with Ursa. Ursa is
Sure.
You don't have a classic flagship project.
No, at this point, really, I think honestly, a discovery would lead to us calling something a flagship. We always take the approach that you essentially drill it and kill it. In a sense, if you drill it and it's not giving the results you want, you move on to another project. When our team had success at ISO Energy with Hurricane, it's important to note it wasn't the first 5 projects that spun out of NextGen, right? It wasn't even the 6th project we bought; it was the 7th. And you have to have a level of confidence and just willingness to move on to a different project if one's not yielding the results, because the ultimate goal is discovery, and you just have to find the project that sets yourself up the best for that.
Yeah, but Ursa is your biggest project. I mean, by size.
Yeah, correct. So,
okay, can you tell me a little bit more about this project? What's the infrastructure? Who are your neighbors? At what stage is that project? Has any historical work done there? And what's the plan and budget for this project?
Sure. So I guess taking one step back, Steve Blower, our chairman, who's obviously had a tremendous amount of track records, a tremendous amount of success in the basin through discovery with Denison, Griffin, ISO Energy, Hurricane. He really was the brainchild of the land package we put together. And he was always saying that locally, it's very difficult to find deposits, but regionally, there is a little bit of a pattern to them, right? You have these big, long uranium corridors where you can map, basically northeast trending ones where you can map from McArthur River down to Phoenix, Griffin, Key Lake. And so he said, to set ourselves up for success, we better put ourselves along these corridors. And the good thing about the east side of the basin, that's where all the current producing mines are. There's a lot of infrastructure, but in and around, McArthur River and places like that, there's been a lot of exploration. And so you start to take a step back and start to think, okay, maybe there's a room for a hurricane-sized deposit, but is there room for that next great monster, right? And where is this next great trend going to be found? Obviously, NextGen, in fission, right? They have Arrow and Triple R. They kind of have a really good trend going on in that area. So Steve's like, where's the next logical place for us to find that next great district? And so we knew we had to head deeper into the basin. And so that's led us to the Cable Bay Shear Zone, which is an analog to the McArthur River trend. It's this big, long, linear northeast trend that's had limited exploration in the past. And that's where our Ursa project is. We managed to put together about 60 kilometers of this trend, and we really think it has an opportunity to become that next great district. And so past exploration on it really hasn't had any modern geophysics. It hasn't had any exploration since the 90s. That was by a company called Uranium, which was eventually broken apart, and each pieces went to kind of Cameco and Orano.
I remember them, yeah.
Yeah, they had a lot of success, actually.
Yeah,
and there was like 12 drill holes, I believe, drilled on the project. They did hit some weak mineralization, which is like 0.2% U3O8. It was deeper in the basement below the unconformity, which doesn't seem like that high grade relative to other stuff in the basin, but that's often how, these monsters start to show themselves, right? At Hurricane, we had some elevated uranium in the sandstone, a good-looking structure. We projected that down and hit Hurricane Denison when Steve and the team found Griffin. There was a bit of weak uranium mineralization just below the unconformity in the basement. They went up to unconformity, didn't get the results they wanted, went further down to the basement and hit Griffin zone. And so there's just, the fact that this trend is fertile, has had limited drilling. It's also never proven out the geophysical target. It's never properly intersected the conductor. And these graphitic conductors are what all the current mines are on the east side of the basin associated. And so for us, we started to just go through the checkbox, right? Go through the checklist of stuff, saying, okay, it's a fertile trend. There is uranium mineralization. It's a long trend and analog to the McArthur River trend. It's had a limited exploration. It's just begging for modern geophysics. So right away, we knew that this is a great opportunity. And so that's why we plan on doing some geophysics here, probably within the next few weeks. We should be started.
Okay. Do we have a budget for that?
Yeah. So first part of the budget would be, about $300,000 or $400,000 for airborne EM that we're going to do over top of the Ursa project. Like I said, that's the first pass we need to make. Eventually, we'd follow it up with ground geophysics over the areas that the airborne flags, and that should hopefully be later this year. And then we'd set ourselves up for a good maiden drill program in early 2024.
Okay. Same question for Astro and Orion. Astro is not so far from Wheeler River, right? Some 40
Yeah,
kilometers.
Exactly. Yeah. Even McArthur, even Ursa itself is only about 45 kilometers west of McArthur. There's infrastructure to the area. I mean, Cameco used to haul a drill every winter into Centennial Deposit, which is further northwest of us. So it's pretty easy access. A lot of people have drilled in the region in the past. I mean, even I flew a drill out in that area in 2013, so I'm very familiar with that general area. But the good thing is with our team is, there's zero learning curve as far as how to operate in Saskatchewan, right? We have a long track record of it. We have great relationships with the local communities. We have great relationships with local contractors, and we just know how to get it done efficiently. Astro, you mentioned, that one really, we actually staked it. It became available, and we managed to piece it together for about $30,000. And that one we viewed as, if Ursa is going to become, a great district, we better grab every piece of ground available in and around it, because the value of that ground will go up significantly if we do have success at Ursa. And so, I mean, you saw that with NextGen and Fission, right? NextGen had SW3, like all those different ones they put together because they knew how valuable that land would become based on their success. And Fission, the same thing. So, it's just that approach where if it's a good looking piece of ground next to the ground we really like, you better piece it together.
Yeah. What about charcoal and Castor? Did I pronounce it right? Charcoal.
Yep, exactly. So those ones, similar to what I said about making sure we're along these uranium corridors, those ones are outside of the basin. So you'd be going for basement hosted deposits similar to Arrow, which NextGen Energy has. And so charcoal's a long trend of Cameco's Eagle Point mine. It just extends out. It was explored in the past, boom, kind of 2004 to 2007. It's very structurally complex. And what we did was we actually flew some airborne over charcoal and Castor earlier this year, and kind of proved out that there are these conductors. Charcoal, the conductors continue from that Collins Bay trend, so that it looks good on that front. And Castor was interesting. So Castor is this trend that comes off of the basin. You could probably map it from McLean Lake or Rough Rider Midwest. The knock on it has always been that people didn't think there was a conductor there. And that's just, we felt it was a product of maybe, okay, there wasn't any modern geophysics. So when we managed to get it, we flew some airborne, like I said, and right away it lit up a conductor. So it immediately upgraded that area, because it was a trend, like I said, that people had always noticed, but they just felt that there wasn't a conductor on it. So we've proven that there is. And so now we'd have to kind of advance it, work eventually towards drilling those projects in the future.
And what about Helios project?
So Helios, Andy Carmichael, our VP of Exploration, he joined us in February. He actually came over from ISO Energy. He was their former VP of Exploration, led them through their initial resource, which is in the highest grade resource of all time in the Athabasca Basin. So he came over and he saw an opportunity there where previous work had misinterpreted the extension of this almost Wares trend that comes down. So the Wares trend has some weak uranium mineralization, similar to Ursa, where you start checking off the boxes of what you look for in a project. There's weak uranium mineralization. Past interpretations was that trend ended to where our Helios project was, but Andy and our geophysicist took another look at it and said, oh, this was misinterpreted. This trend actually continues right onto our project. And not only that, it eventually gets right close to this long crustal scale feature, the Grease River Shear, that cross-cuts it. So it becomes this very structurally complex. It's a long trend of mineralization. So it's another one where we just saw, okay, it's overlooked. It has uranium mineralization along trend to the north. And it's just one of those ones that just has a lot of space going after a large elephant-sized deposit. So it just checked all those boxes. So we grabbed it again by staking it for probably less than 20 grand. We put that piece of ground together.
But no plans for this year to do some work.
So that one, we would maybe do some geophysics later in the year. Once again, like I said, it does need that modern geophysics. So you do some airborne. So I think for us, the big thing right now is just generating targets over the next 4 to 5 months and making sure we have a pipeline of targets, right? So it is going to be a significant amount of geophysics and really lead into drilling in early 2024.
Okay. Tell me more about copper project you have.
Yeah, so that one is interesting. That one is right parallel to Janus Lake, which is JB that Rio Tinto was earning into with Forum. It's something where a group of geologists had interpreted that we might have a bit of a syncline fold where the geology repeats itself, where you have this, you get a 0.4% copper on the Janus Lake side. And so we interpreted that the geology might continue onto our ground that we have. And so we managed to piece it together and bought it off some prospectors. And then we did some airborne geophysics on it, followed by some ground geophysics. It's an interesting project. Our priority now is uranium. But I think if the copper market takes off, it could be a value creative opportunity for us to bring in a partner on it.
Okay. What is your current cash balance and how do you plan to spend that money, and for how long do you think that amount will get you through?
Sure. So we're at about 1.5 million Canadian in the bank. So that's easy enough to cover our next stage of exploration at Ursa, which I mentioned was that airborne geophysics, which should be in the 400K range. Our burn rate's quite really low. Like I said, we just have a few management people on. A lot of us haven't been taking much of a cash balance as far as wage since we listed this company. That's not really why we did it. And so that could last us easily until our drill program early next year.
That's good. That's very good. I want to discuss share structure and skin in the game, which is very important metric for me. Can you tell us more about share structure, number of outstanding shares, warrants, options?
Sure. Yeah, so we're just under 34 million shares outstanding. Warrants, just about 300,000 warrants outstanding. So not too many on that front. Management and advisors own about 35% of the outstanding shares. We've put in money at every level, significant amount of capital, and we keep buying on the open market. So lots of skin in the game. We have lots of strong support. And we've only done one raise since we listed. We did that at 25 cents per hard dollar and 35 cents for flow through. And that was before we actually had any of our uranium projects. So we raised about $2 million. And
how many shares do you have personally?
I have just over 1.8 million.
Okay. Can you tell me more about your team?
Yeah, so our team actually consists, I always like to say we've really had our fingerprints on a lot of the success stories in the basin over the past 15 years, whether it's through NextGen, ISO Energy, Denison Mines. And that really all starts with Steve Blower, our chairman. Steve, I'd say, has an unmatched track record of discovery in the Athabasca Basin. He was the VP of exploration at Denison when they expanded Phoenix and also discovered Griffin. He moved on to help NextGen Energy with their initial deposit, and then they spun out ISO Energy, and that's where he went on as VPX of ISO Energy and led that team to discovering Hurricane. ISO Energy sold some assets to 92 Energy, and Steve joined that board there and really helped them as lead technical advisor, where they've now hit that GMZ zone. So I
Yeah.
mean, he's had over the past 15 years, he's just had his fingerprints on a ton of success. Next guy would be Craig Perry. He's a strategic advisor for Cosa. His office is right next to mine. He was a founder of NextGen, founding CEO of ISO Energy. Really, him and Steve were a perfect match for that company at the time. And Craig has been really vital as far as just introducing us to different capital markets, providing access to capital, and even having relationships with a lot of the long uranium funds over the past 10 years. So he's huge track record in the uranium space. And then the management team themselves. So Andy Carmichael, VP of Exploration, he took over as VP of Exploration after Steve left ISO. And like I said, he led them through that initial resource. It's the highest grade resource in the history of the basin. Andy, has a tremendous track record. He was obviously part of the Hurricane Discovery team. He's worked at so many deposits around the basin. Obviously, he was at Denison, so he worked on Phoenix, Griffin, J Zone with Fission. They obviously worked at PLS, so he knows pretty much every deposit there is in the basin. And a good thing about him too is he's really good tactically with logistics and exploration. He knows how to explore efficiently and safely, and really maintain good relationships with the northern communities. Next guy would be Justin Rodko. He was a senior geologist at ISO Energy. He was also part of the Hurricane Discovery team. So really, the 4 key members of the Hurricane Discovery team, Craig, Steve, Justin, Andy, are all currently members of the COSA team. And he's come on as our corporate development manager. Kind of a similar pathway that I took when I joined ISO Energy. So he's coming to help us out here and help us grow the company.
Sounds like very experienced team you have there.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be a part of it.
Yeah, right. Okay, before I let you go, I have a new format in my interviews with 10 quick questions for my guests. First 5 are the B&B questions: bullish, neutral, or bearish questions. For example, I say nickel, you say bullish, bearish, or neutral. And the other 5 are related. The other 5 questions are related to certain stocks or certain topic. For example, okay. I say Amazon or Tesla, and you say on which stock are you bullish more. Ready?
Okay, let's do it. Okay.
Copper.
Bullish.
Oil.
Bullish.
Real estate.
Bearish.
Precious metals.
Bullish.
Okay, let's go. Let's get to these other 5 questions. Tesla or Ford?
Oh, Ford.
Uranium jurisdiction: Australia or United States?
United States.
Okay. Uranium jurisdiction: Niger or Namibia?
Namibia.
Encore Energy or Denison Mines?
I'd be a bit biased on that one. I worked for
Okay,
Denison. So Denison Mines.
Okay. Cameco or Kazatomprom?
Cameco.
Thanks. This was just for fun. Nothing special. One final question: how can investors reach out to you and your company?
Yeah, so I mean, you can go onto our website, Cosa Resources.ca, and we do have an email there. You can contact us, or maybe we can post that email to the link of this YouTube video or something like that. Would be good. And yeah, absolutely reach out. We have an IR person that can answer anything, and we can also guide you directly to me.
Keith, thank you very much. I wish you luck with Cosa Resources and with your projects, and hope to speak with you sometime soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.